Hi, this is Stan Bush.
Hi, this is Stephanie Calvert.
This is John Payne.
This is Jack Hughes.
Hey everyone, this is Britt Lightning from Vixen.
Hi, I'm Carrie Stevens.
Hello, I'm Kofi Baker.
And you're listening to Play That Rock and Roll.
Let's drill in on the individuals in the group, and let's start with Cass Elliot, because she definitely seems like the breakout talent of the group. And I'll be honest, didn't know a whole lot about her before reading the book. I've known that her daughter has done a lot of work trying to keep her music, like on social media, introducing that to a new generation.
Yeah.
I was very surprised to read in the book that John didn't even want her in the band. Can you talk about why he was resistant to having her in the band and why they had so many conflicts through their whole run?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. John, after the Beatles came, John was, folk music really kind of got eviscerated. There was a big folk boom, and a lot of great talented people were playing folk music that would eventually become seminal rock and roll players like Stephen Stills and David Crosby and Neil Young and Peter Tork of the Monkees, and all these people, John Sebastian, and the British invasion really kind of wiped them all out, because like I said before, those guys were all younger than John by 6-7 years, and when they had grown up with rock and roll and they loved it, and they kind of rock and roll kind of fell out of favor in the Teen Idol era for a lot of those guys. But then when the Beatles came, it got them all excited again, and they all dropped like I said in the book, they dropped their Martins and their Gibsons and picked up Rickenbackers and Gretches and things like that. And John loved folk music. He was in Greenwich Village right as it was getting started, because he had been there with his group, the Smoothies. They were a singing quartet, kind of like the Ames brothers. Yeah. There's a whole history of that. But was at the forefront of the folk boom, and he was never a folk music lover, but he became one, and really wanted to make it work. And there were still some vestiges holding out there, like Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Richie Havens, and Donovan, and people like that. And he wanted to keep going on in that mold. And I think, when he reformed the Journeymen as the new Journeymen, it's like the new originals, when he reformed them, he wanted to do like a Peter, Paul, and Mary kind of thing. And Cass was Denny's friend. Like, he introduced her to them, and John was the only person I think who didn't like Cass. Cass kind of was one of those people who had a personality that just really rubbed everybody the right way.
Yeah.
She ingratiated herself to people very easily, always made them think like they were the most important person when she was talking to them. John just didn't feel it. He was just annoyed by her. He didn't like her. He didn't like her personality. He didn't like her weight. He had this image of, he had this beautiful wife in Michelle, and she was the Mary, Mary Travers, very beautiful woman.
Yep.
And he and Denny were Peter and Paul, and they wanted to get this thing going, and she just wanted to be part of it, but there wasn't room. It was a trio, but she persisted. And really when they moved to LA and reunited, the four of them, after being in the Virgin Islands for a number of months in 1965, in the summer of 1965, and they started going around to record auditions, and Cass would go with them, and they went to Nick Vanette's house, and Nick Vanette's a producer, has produced millions of things that we've heard of, most notably the Beach Boys. He was their first producer when they came to Capitol Records. And when he saw them, he's like, he loved the image of they just had this look. You had tall John and, short and squad Cass, and beautiful Michelle, and handsome Denny. And they just had this, incredible, just diverse look about them,
Yeah.
that really kind of embodied the area. And Nick Vanette's a guy who, his fingers on the pulse. He's watching everything that's going on in the music business. And when he heard her, and then when he heard her sing with them, he's like, I don't want the three of you. I want the four of you.
Yeah.
And there's no way. I'm not interested in the three of you. She's got to be part of it. And I think when they got that reaction, and the guy they would audition for next would be Lou Adler, it was the same response. So at that point, she was just kind of crowbarred into the group, really against his wishes. But I think John, like, okay, well, she can sing well, and this is how we're going to get signed, and let's make the most of it. But I think that lingering resentment always kind of stood by, and I think it really reared its ugly head when she became kind of like the most popular member of the group.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I've watched a number of interviews with her on YouTube, after reading this book, and you're right, she comes across as very like a socialite, very fun to listen to, perfect fodder for like a talk show.
I think she even filled in for Johnny Carson a couple times, if I remember.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, so I guess I can see the jealousy angle there. Do you think they would have had a chance at success at all if somehow they had proceeded on without her?
I don't think so. She was that secret weapon. It's why they could never really do a proper reunion. Even in the '80s, they brought in Spanky McFarland from Spanky and Our Gang, who had a really great voice, real booming voice. Not dissimilar from Cass's, but it just wasn't the same. She was just incredibly versatile talent, and she was that key ingredient, almost like McGuinn's Rickenbacker in the Byrds, or John Bonham's drumming or Keith Moon's drumming. It's just you can replace that. You just can't replace it, and you try. Led Zeppelin never tried. The Who certainly tried, and they made some good records, but it just wasn't the same. It wasn't, it wasn't Keith Moon. But it's like trying to replace John Lennon. You can't. It's just nobody has that voice. John Lennon didn't have the greatest singing voice in the world, but he had a really great rock and roll sound. He had an incredible sound that was just you could only have in rock and roll. I love John Lennon's voice.
Oh yeah.
And and Cass is the same thing. And like I said, they tried, never really, they recorded stuff that never really got released in their lifetime in the '80s as the new Mamas and Papas, whatever you want to call them. But eventually they just kind of became an oldies group, doing the oldies circuit and playing state fairs and, music fests and things like that. But no, I don't think they, if they had just gone on without her, they would have kind of just sounded like another group.
Yeah. Reading the book, I was reminded of the song Creek Alley, which I knew was a thing. I knew that line, and no one's getting fat except Mama Cass. I knew that it was out there, but I had forgotten about it when I had read the book. Rediscovering that and watching the videos of them playing it, and like 201, every show they're on, when they sing the song, the camera cuts right to a tight shot of her when she has to sing that line. And no one's getting fat except Mama Cass. It's jaw-dropping. It's humiliating, and it's like, my question is, why did Cass stick with them when John writes a lyric like that and they just hang her out to dry, it seems?
It's a good question. I guess because they were hot and they had hits and they were making money. And growing up in that era, you had to deal with that, and I think, I have two teenagers, so I know that stuff still goes on. It hasn't changed. It's maybe not as open or, done on sitcoms or things like it used to be, but that was something she had to deal with, and she made the best out of it. She took lemons and made it into lemonade. Not saying that was the right thing to do or you should do that, but she was able to roll with it. And even like I wrote in the book, the way she sang that line with such enthusiasm and vim and vigor, really just to kind of stick it to John, I think. because John writes this lyric. He and Michelle write this song together. Michelle gasps when he comes up with it.
Yeah.
And he's just like, nah, it's just a placeholder. We'll change it, And he never did. And, and Cass is probably like, okay, here we go again,
Yeah.
but, I'm going to stick it to him and sing it as enthusiastically as I can. And she did, and it became really one of their last really big hits.
Right. Yeah.